Welcome back to Embrace Your Value. Today we have a very special episode for you. Our beautiful resident therapist, Kristen Burrus, has built a lovely workbook that she wants to share out there. So I am going to interview her again and talk about this workbook. And then we will link the workbook in the show notes so you can jump on in and grab it. And I'm assuming that she will also have it linked to her website. Kristen, maybe tell me if that's a yes or no. Will you have it on your website?
It will be linked to my website when I get my website host to do that.
Good. So eventually it will be on her website under kristenburrus.com. So here we go. Kristen, are you ready for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So by the way, I love the workbook. I've seen the workbook. It's beautiful. It's really well done. I think it was great. So let's start with the title, Coming Back to Yourself. What does coming back to yourself mean to you?
Yeah, let me start with a little bit of background. The workbook came to me as I noticed that I was saying a lot of the same things over and over to clients and wanted a consolidated place. So I think it's coming back to yourself is more of like a metaphor for like, how can we get a place where we feel comfortable? We feel grounded. We feel clarity because we don't always have those things in our life. And that's a lot of times why people will come to therapy is to answer some of these questions.
Wow, absolutely. I love that. So you just said that you created the workbook because you were finding yourself repeating some of the same themes and information. So that was my next question. But was there also something happening in your own life that made you realize this workbook needed to exist?
Nothing specifically currently, but it's more, yes, as I've moved through my life, how have I found direction? What have I done? And for someone to hand me something like this 20 years ago, I would have been a whole different thing, whole different life. So that's part of why I did it is, again, I was seeing themes. I was making worksheets for clients and noticing the themes within the worksheets and thought this could be a much bigger product for clients and or other consumers.
Is there a specific person? I know you said you keep seeing themes, but is there a specific person that you pictured sitting down with this workbook when you were creating it? What might be going on in their life right now that they would want to consume and utilize this work?
Yeah, here's the thing about the workbook is it has lots of different sections. It's not meant to necessarily be used in a specific order. So it says in the front of the workbook that you don't have to use this in a perfectly placed order, right? It's meeting you where you are. So part of the reason why I set it up that way is because people are in different places. So there's things on boundaries, there's things on values, there's things on grounding. Maybe you're in a place where you just can't keep yourself grounded. We start with that chapter, not at the very beginning, because that's what you need in this moment.
I love that. So the full title of the book is Coming Back to Yourself, a simple and practical workbook for emotional regulation, self-understanding, and clearer choices. So the subtitle includes emotional regulation, self-understanding, and clearer choices. How do those pieces connect for you and your clients? What are some stories, or I just want our listeners to have a chance to go, oh, that's me. I need that too.
Sure. I think most people need help with emotional regulation. If you weren't taught that in childhood and you haven't been to therapy or you haven't done any self work, then emotional regulation is the key to taking care of yourself and self love and understanding who you are. So, another thing that people come in and see me for, we go through goals during the first session. And one of it is, I just want to get back to who I was. And that I challenge them on because it's like, you're never going to be that person, right? You can only be yourself, which is why the workbook is like coming back to yourself, not coming back to the old version of you, is whatever yourself is, right? So I feel like
we're just talking about the emotional regulation, self-understanding, and clearer choices, and how those pieces really connect into your work. Like why someone would maybe see themselves in what you're talking about, like how they would see themselves.
yeah. So yes, I think that self-regulation is the first key, and then our emotional regulation. And then once we can really understand ourselves, if we can regulate enough to then tap in and understand ourselves and why we are the way we are and who we are, who we want to become, all of those things, then we can start making clear choices on how to get to where it is that we want to go. So if you want to have a better relationship with your spouse, we have to go, okay, first of all, am I regulated enough to do that? Second of all, do I even understand myself enough to know if how this is going to be possible between us? And then we have to start making choices about how we're going to go about this thing.
So for someone who maybe you said at the very beginning of, or at the very beginning of that last question, you said some people weren't taught emotional regulation. I know that's not something I understood and wasn't taught as a child. How might somebody know or understand that they are emotionally dysregulated? What would that look like?
Obviously, it looks different for everyone. So I would say it would be things like frequent worry, frequent anxiety, depression. Those are clinical terms. But when we get in moods that we can't get out of, if our physical body is having reactions that we don't have any control over, if our emotions are running away and they are taking us with them, those are the individuals that tend to need emotional regulation and nervous system grounding and regulation.
So a lot of people know what they should do when they're overwhelmed, but knowing and actually doing it are two very different things. How does the workbook help bridge that gap?
Yeah, I think understanding yourself and making clearer choices can lead us to that. So, but once we're regulated and we're doing self-care and we're taking care of ourselves, choices do become much more clear. Our goals become much more clear because we're not all up in our head about the worry or the past or the future or the sadness or whatever it is. We can ground ourselves in our body, then we can come down and be more present.
Yeah, absolutely. You described this as simple and practical. Why was it important to you that this didn't become another workbook that someone starts, gets overwhelmed by, and leaves sitting on the nightstand?
Oh, because keep it simple, right? It just means it's a simple workbook. So it's not simple in the fact that it's dumbed down, but just that I feel like it's easy to understand. And you took a look at it and hopefully you felt it was also easy to understand. You do have some of the same skills as I do as a coach, but I would think most people would be able to really connect with it and find something useful.
And I think the other thing when people hear the word simple, for you and because I have workbooks that I call simple. And it's not that the work is easy. It's that you can pick it up and do just a section like we talked about at the beginning, and then put it down and really implement that section. And that's how my books are all made too, is pick it up, do a section, read it, understand it, and then go implement it into your life. And when you have that figured out, then come to the next section. That's what gets to be simple to me anyway. That's the way I took it. So I love that. So if you can, walk us through the workbook a little bit.
I think the anchor point of the book is what I have called the house of self. And what that does is it takes all the things that I teach that we've taught, Jen, you and I together on this program have also taught, And and those things are values, boundaries, access, perspective, and meaning. So what I've created is a graphic of a house and how all of these things are interconnected into the house. So that's the foundation of the workbook and the central theme of the workbook. And then how do we go through each one of these things? Foundation is values. So the book lines out, okay, how do we determine what our values are? Walls are boundaries. Okay, how do we, because we can only protect our values with boundaries. How do I know what things need boundaries? How do I create better boundaries? The doors are what we let in and out of our house. And but things like access and choices that we make and things like that. The windows are how we see the world. So how we look out and maybe even sometimes how we feel people look in, right? So depending on what you need. And then the roof, which was really the hardest one for me to capture, was meaning. And it's the meaning that we make of our lives. Because when we understand our life's meaning, we can be very clear about our choices. We can be very clear about what's healthy and unhealthy for us. We can be clear about all of those things that are integral to living a fulfilled life.
Ah, that's beautiful. That was very well said. I love that. I'm curious, what, if anything, did you learn about yourself while you were writing Coming Back to Yourself? And was there anything that surprised you during the process?
If I'm being transparent, it would be that I actually have good ideas and that I can put them together in a cohesive way. Right. So I think I always knew like the smattering of ideas was good, but having the ability, like just when I developed the House of Self model, which I am actually preview trying to make into an actual like therapeutic model, which is very exciting. But when I developed, that's when I got really excited about sharing it. Was okay, now I've created something. And as I've been presenting it to my current clients, they're like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense based on all the things that we've talked about. And so I got excited about that. And it was like, okay, well, if it makes sense to these people as well, then it can make sense to everybody. To answer your question, the long way is that I realized that I can be creative in a way, which I've always said I'm not a very creative person, but I can be creative in a way that makes me feel fulfilled.
Absolutely. And isn't it fun to create something tangible? Even though, no, they can't hold the house, you're still creating something tangible for them to have the full image in their mind, and they can like hold on to the concepts and the ideas. And yeah, I feel that because I do the same thing, and it's, oh yeah, I love the fact that this got to be your creative outlet, because I believe everybody's creative in their own way, whether they want to believe it or not. It's just how we do it. Was there anything that you almost didn't put in the workbook, or that kind of came in at the last minute? Maybe you didn't put something in the workbook, or almost didn't, because you thought it was vulnerable or challenging, or maybe even difficult to explain? Or was there even something that at the last minute you're like, oh, this has to go in?
What I'll say is I didn't intend for it to be as long as it is. And so I don't know if there's an answer to your specific question, but it was like as this thought came in, another thought came in. And then as those things flowed, it was like, oh, this also applies. And so I was pulling, like, the intent of the workbook was really to be much shorter, but it grew and it became what it needed to be.
Ah, so right now this is in digital format. Do you have any intention of having it published at any point?
Perhaps. So I'm also working on a book. And if that book goes out while they're not intertwined, they'll be integrative. And also, I've completed a dating guide that I'm going to soon put up because I hear from too many clients how hard dating is and how for both men and women, it is exhausting. And so I've got a guide to how not to be overwhelmed, exhausted, and just get in a place where you just want to give up on it. I will just see what happens. If it becomes successful in digital format, I would be more than delighted to create a tangible workbook that people could open and use. And another thing that I really wanted for this workbook, and this is something that kind of is laid out in the very beginning, is if you're already in therapy with me or anybody, this is a tool that you could take in and have really good conversations with your therapist about and be vulnerable in a different kind of way where you don't have to be thinking about things like right off the bat. You could have taken, so almost treat it like homework of a kind, right? And take pieces in to your therapy sessions and maybe discuss. Like, I feel like there's something that any therapist could take from this and just create a whole session or a couple of sessions around to just get, even if it's like a get to know you for the client, like second session type thing. Like, you give it to them at the end of the first session, be like, here, try these things, bring it back. Let's see what worked. Let's look what didn't work, or assign certain sections. Like, I think there's a lot of ways to utilize it.
Absolutely. I think you're right. And I love that. There might be a whole nother model to selling it too, where you could sell it to different therapists. This is just me thinking out loud, but you could sell it to different therapists and sell it at a different price point where they get to then share it out to their clients.
And that is part of why I'm trying to turn it into a model so that it can become a system.
Absolutely. I love this.
And this is how every working theory model has ever happened, is that somebody came up with an idea and they tested the idea and it worked. And so let's make it available to other people. And why not me?
Exactly. No, exactly. I agree. And just for your knowledge, if you do decide to turn it into a published piece of work, I may or may not know somebody who could help you set that all up and get it all put out there. So
You do.
you could have some help in that regard.
I would appreciate you.
Oh, absolutely. I'm happy to share all these things that I learn as I just go about my business and go, I've got to do this. And I punt and figure it out. So I love that. If someone is listening right now, I'm thinking, I don't really know if I'm emotionally dysregulated. I just know I'm overwhelmed, frustrated, or making choices I regret. What would you want that person to hear?
I would want that person to hear that there are ways to regulate emotionally, whether I would say most people, if they're feeling overwhelmed, are probably struggling with a little bit of emotion regulation. It doesn't have to be acute or really that much, but if that feeling of overwhelm, any extreme feeling, is going to be a product of an inability to regulate those emotions, that's when they get big and they get out of control, when you can't regulate them. It's not about not having emotions. It's about not getting stuck in them. It's about not letting them overwhelm your day. If they feel like they're making choices that aren't aligned with their values, or they don't know what their values are, there's definitely skills in this workbook to help with that. If nothing else, you can just get your values written down. We have to start with what's the path? The values are the path to get to the goal.
Yeah, the values are the path for your life. If you don't have your values in your life, I know for me, I was really popcorning from thing to thing because I wasn't set in my values and I wasn't following that path. I didn't understand that's really how I could live my life. And that wasn't modeled for me as I was growing up. And that's nothing against my family structure. It just wasn't modeled to me. And so, yeah, I 100% agree. Get the workbook for that reason alone, and then take the rest for what you get out of it. And that's the thing I really want to say about this as someone who has seen it and someone who does this kind of work as well. Not buy the workbook because you think it's going to be overpriced or it's going to be really, it's not cheap. It's not cheap in how it's made, but it's not an expensive workbook. So go get the workbook. Don't let the price dictate whether or not you buy the workbook, because it's very valuable and it's very relevant to, I would say, what anybody needs. I would use this workbook and just be like, oh, this is something. And it's actually something, I have a couple clients as we're talking about this, that I may send them to the link, because even though they do a lot of work with me and we talk a lot about this, the one thing that I will say always is that people need to hear things differently. And so a ton of times I will have a client come back to me and say, hey, Jen, I heard this and I want it, and this really made sense. And I'll look at them and go, are you kidding? I've been talking about this for 3 years, but you finally got it. So I'm happy. I'm so happy. But yeah, so I guess what I'm getting at is that the price does not dictate the value in this workbook. And it's priced at a point where you can go get it, and there should be no sweat in going to get it. I'm not saying it's cheap because I don't like that word, but it's priced at a point where anybody should be able to go get it and really utilize it.
Yeah, I think I made it accessible to
That's a good word.
yes, accessible to the general population. It's not like it's such an exclusive price that it doesn't make sense for anybody. It's a couple cups of Starbucks coffee and, you don't take the caffeine and use the workbook instead kind of thing.
Absolutely. So I just have maybe one, maybe two more questions. And imagine someone has worked through the Coming Back to Yourself workbook and they come back to you maybe 6 months later. What would you love to hear from them that they tell you that's different in their life? Like, how has it changed their life?
Oh, yeah. I would say if they could just feel confident that they are able to slow down in life, find joy, understand themselves, make clear value-based decisions, and creating more, all of those things create more confidence, then I think that would be my ideal situation. Is like, oh, now I can do the things that I want to do because I'm not so foggy or confused or shameful, or it's not a replacement for therapy. It's a tool that you can use to understand yourself a little bit better, and a great tool to take into therapy. But I think it gives you the ability to do some introspection, take a look at who you are, and a motivator to find a coach, to find a therapist, to find someone that can be a backboard or even a mirror for what's going on with you.
I love that. And I'm sure it's the same for you, but I love it when my clients get something and they're like, oh, I know how this fits in my life. And then they start implementing it and they start seeing the changes. That is my greatest satisfaction. And I'm sure it's the same way. And so this is just going to be another tool for people to use. And it's a beautiful tool. It's incredible and amazing. So we will link the link in the show notes. But again, if for some reason you can't get back to the show notes, you don't find this, go to KristenBurrus.com and find it on her website. It will be on her website. And really just embrace yourself in it. And if you really can't find it, leave us a message and one of us will go and drop the link in for you. Leave it in the show notes, shoot us a quick email. One of us will come and we will drop that in for you so that you have it, because it really is a great tool. And I would love to see everyone be using it and have it just be the next big thing out there. So yeah,
That would be
Kristen,
great.
thank you so much for sharing this with us and just sharing all your expertise and your heart all the time, because you really do come in here and pour into the community all the time. And I, for one, love that. And I think it's very valuable for the people listening.
Thank you. And you as well, Jen. You have so much heart and so much kindness in you. And I
Thank you.
appreciate that about you. And I hope that your clients appreciate that about you as well. So thank you for taking the time to interview me about my workbook. And I do hope that some people can find some meaning in it.
Absolutely. And so if you know anybody who might need this workbook, be sure and share this episode with them. Send them just the link, whatever you need to do, but get that out there. Don't forget to subscribe, give us 5 stars. We would love any of that. And until next time, we'll see you then.
The end.